Age Tech Innovators.
Hello, and welcome to Age Tech Innovators, the podcast where we explore how technology is transforming the way we care for our aging and increasingly vulnerable population. I'm Monty, your host, and each week we chat with inspiring leaders who are making a real difference in the lives of older adults and vulnerable individuals. We're going to be sharing innovation and ideas that help support and uplift those who need it most. Join us as we work together to build a brighter, more caring future for everyone. Now, let's dive in. So I am honored to be with Peter today. Peter, run me through who you are and what you do in 60 seconds.
My name is Peter Small. I'm currently the Chief Medical Officer for HYFE. My background is as a doctor, a scientist, and a health innovator. And about 4 years ago, when I left my association with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where I had built and ran their tuberculosis program, I joined a company that is entirely focused on cough.
Wow. Well, we're going to have some interesting points of conversation today. You mentioned at the start before this call that you're tracking the number of coughs that you have, or you mentioned, I cough on average X amount of times per hour. Can you run me through what made you choose a business that was to do with coughs? And can you also run me through what your personal interest is in health technology and how you got here?
Yeah, well, my background is as a infectious disease clinician, so we saw a lot of patients with a cough. But my major focus was tuberculosis, and globally in how we control TB, and spent about 35 years of my life chasing down people with cough and trying to get them tested for TB. So cough has really been a long-standing focus of mine, and I myself am a chronic cougher. I cough 40 to 80 times a day, and I have for over 3 decades. And so when I started working with some others on the potential that we could actually measure cough, I got super excited and joined the company.
That's amazing. What was the reason you got so into the research around tuberculosis?
You know, I could tell a very rational story in retrospect, but the reality is it was sheer luck. I happened to have a mentor who was a TB expert who I wanted to work with, and it was just a really lucky break because tuberculosis is a massive problem, one of the biggest health problems in the world. And I had this incredible opportunity to have the confidence of the richest family in the world, Bill and Melinda Gates, to try and bring innovation to improve its global control and treatment. It was a phenomenal phase of my life, and frankly, I haven't had that much fun until I joined HYFE, because the startup world is interesting and exciting in its own ways.
What were some of the key learnings that you brought from working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation into HYFE? How do you transfer and translate some of that expertise and wisdom into the startup world?
Well, I think in the early days at the Gates Foundation, we were incredibly ambitious and unstructured. And I think that had really opened up a lot of doors. Over time, as the organization grew and the fields got a little more structured, it became much more of an enterprise operation. So I think the lessons that I brought to the startup were both the positives of what it's like to take on big problems and how to address and prioritize and strategize around those, which were much more, I think, the lessons from the latter years at the Gates Foundation.
Okay, fantastic. And for people who are listening right now, can you quickly run us through what HYFE does and the mission that you have?
Yeah, let me start with the mission. I mean, cough. Everyone coughs. And for everyone, at some point in their life, it's problematic. You know, if you have a cold, if you have COVID. But for many people, and it's probably about 10% of America, chronic cough is a problem. And for half of them, it's a manifestation of some other disease like asthma or gastric reflux, postnasal drip. But for about half of those people, it's actually just a neural hypersensitivity. The cough itself is a disease. So cough is one of the most common reasons that people go to seek health care. And when you go to see your doctor in this age of precision health, in a very wonderful way, everything gets measured. Your height, your weight, your blood pressure, your PO2, on and on and on. But the reason you're there, I have a cough doctor, doesn't get measured at all. And so it creates a massive impediment to communication, diagnosis, and management. Because people, frankly, don't know how much they cough. I mean, Monty, how many times did you cough yesterday?
I do not know.
No one knows. And yet your doctor will say, so, and what time of day did you cough the most? And what were the triggers? And people just don't know. So that was really the impetus for our company. And the efforts to measure cough have been ongoing for decades. In the 50s, people put tape recorders underneath patients' beds and just listened to and counted the coughs. 30 years ago, that was sort of modernized with a device that's worn on the belt and records 24 hours. And again, people listen and count coughs. But we realized that with artificial intelligence, there was a whole new opportunity to recognize coughs. And so we use acoustic AI to recognize and timestamp a cough. Which is, it's amazing at one level but on the other hand, it's become super routine. Like, how does Google know there's a dog in a picture? I mean, no one entered a bunch of rules like dogs have pointy ears, but they don't flop over, like a donkey they just put in thousands, millions, tens of millions of images and the AI figured it out. And that's basically what we did. We annotated we collected over 1 billion cough-like sounds from people around the world on all kinds of devices. And then we listened to tens of millions of these and annotated what were coughs and what were not. And then we feed that into the computer. And the computer has now learned with a very high degree of accuracy to recognize a cough.
That is crazy. What is this? So now I'm going to the doctor and I have an accurate record of, is it both the type of cough and the volume of coughs? Is that what it's able to record?
Excuse me, I am a chronic cougher, so I'm going to cough throughout this. I hope that there's some automatic muting or function so that I'm not blowing
It's
out
fine.
people's ears. But
We'll leave a couple because then it really ties into the story.
So, the most important fact is that a cough has happened and when it's happened. So our primary focus is in developing this, which is just a Fitbit for cough. It just tells me, mine says that in the last 2.5 hours, I've coughed 104 times. I'm coughing about 38 times an hour. That's good for me because, yes, I'm getting over a cold, and yesterday it was over 50. So I'm feeling good about that number. There is information in the sound of a cough, and we're working on advanced algorithms that can help to distinguish one type of cough from another. But for the most part, what really is helpful is the ability to simply know when and how much people are coughing. And that's what, as a clinician, I use most commonly when I'm trying to figure out why someone's coughing or whether the medicine that I've given them is helping.
That's really, really interesting. And so you're able to have almost like a line graph of number of coughs during the 24 hours or over the couple of weeks since trying new medication or since having a new procedure, that type of experience.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's exactly like a Fitbit for cough.
Is this available on the App Store? And my mum has, and I actually know she'll be okay with me saying this because we did a press release, side tangent, but we did a press release about 4 years ago when me and my brother were doing our business. And they asked us, why did you start your business? And we said, it's because of our granny and our mum has a chronic lung condition, a chronic cough. And I said, can we not include that in the press release, please? And then they went and included it in the press release. So it's all over the papers. It's funny. But my mum has a chronic cough. How does she use HYFE? What does she do?
Yeah, so we have a health and wellness, a fitness app that anyone can download. It runs on iOS and Android. If you just Google HYFE, HYFE, or cough monitor, you'll find your way to our website. And that is not a medical device. It's not meant for making diagnoses or managing conditions. It is, however, very helpful in people better understanding their cough and having a more informed conversation with their healthcare provider. Then we also are working on, we have developed and are now in the process of submitting to the FDA for medical clearance a cough monitoring watch, which is, it's a little more accurate because when you're using the phone, when you're talking on the phone, it doesn't record your coughs. If your phone's not near you, it doesn't record your cough. Whereas with the watch, it runs continuously, it's unobtrusive, and both are quite accurate. The watch is currently being used in a number of big studies around the world. Altogether, our technology has been used in over 50 clinical trials. And I mean, we're a science first company. And that's really what has gotten us to this point. And we're now increasingly interacting with coughers through the app to help them better understand their cough.
Fantastic. And so this is a really good example of looking to see where the resolution wasn't being captured in people's healthcare data or health data, and coming up with an innovation to say, let's figure out a way using existing technology to ensure that the information is collected to then improve patient outcomes. So how do you sit? Are you working with insurers? What's your route? You mentioned that there's an app which my mum could use, for example, but is this something that through all of these clinical trials, you're looking to see how we can bring this innovation to market? And I ask that because one of the questions that seems to come up is, wow, we've heard about this new innovation and it's fantastic, but the actual innovators sometimes have a tricky time making it a mass adopted product. At least this is what I understand from conversations on this podcast. So how are you dealing with this? It would be really helpful for other people to hear this.
Yeah, well, when we were an early stage startup, we really didn't think much about that, to be honest. We thought this was a cool idea. Let's build it. I'm sure we'll find a use for it. We're now a very mature startup, and so we have a very clear kind of product development marketing plan that we're working on. But putting it all together and looking back, I'd say that there were really 4 phases for us. The first was to build it and get it right. And we have a really good group of engineers and data scientists. And then the second was to do some science around it, to see, first of all, that it actually works and how accurate it is. Our watch picks up about 90% of coughs as people go around their activity of daily living with maybe one false positive an hour. But also to work with experts in about 13 different diseases to see how it could be used to better understand and manage those diseases. And the third phase was with coughers themselves. So we released this consumer wellness app because it allows us to interact with people who are coughing. And then they tell us what they want, and they tell us how our device is helpful, and they tell us how we should modify the technology. And then finally, in terms of the go-to-market, we have been working with large pharmaceutical companies on some big clinical trials, and we're starting to look at the remote patient monitoring space, and we've even developed a digital therapeutic, which we can talk about at the end of the call, maybe.
Can we talk about it now? That sounds
Sure.
interesting. People listening would hear the phrase digital therapeutic and then want to understand more. So yeah, as a side note, I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Sure. So a digital therapeutic is digitally delivered, scientifically based interventions that have been proven to work. And this has already got a lot of traction in, for example, insomnia and in diabetes. So in diabetes, you take a continuous glucose monitor, you have people enter what they're eating, you get real-time feedback, maybe you have a coach that steps in, and you show that if you better manage your diet and your insulin, which is the science, that you have a better outcome. And there are clinical trials done that show if people use your digital app that they have a better health outcome. Coughing, as I said at the outset, is increasingly being understood as a disease unto itself. It can be a symptom of many conditions, but for many people, chronic unexplained cough is a neural hypersensitivity. And it's a little bit like a mosquito bite. You know, it itches, and you think if I scratch it, it'll feel better, but it just itches worse. For people like myself who have chronic cough, like the back of my throat constantly tickles. I all constantly feel like, wow, if I cough, I bet it'll feel better. But as you just saw, it doesn't. When I cough once, makes me cough again and again. And so it's long been known that if you see a specially trained speech pathologist, that they can spend 1 hour with you every week for a month and reduce your cough dramatically. And what they do is they explain to you that actually, you know, that cough, it's not helping you to cough. There are good coughs, but yours is not one of them. And two, when you feel that urge to cough, you can suppress it by doing things like biting your tongue and swallowing. And then three, the realization that the more you suppress it, like the more you don't scratch that mosquito bite, the more it goes away. So this is the science on which our digital therapeutic is based. Now, the digital part is that we integrate this curriculum with a monitoring so that as people are going through the curriculum and practicing, they can see that their cough is getting better. And if their cough gets worse, we can remind them, hey, your cough's been really bad this morning. Have you been practicing your suppression techniques? And we're now in that third phase of showing how well it works. And we have some early data from just a handful of patients, but it's already quite exciting.
That's amazing. What are this? So let's say there's been some data to show that I'm around a stimulus that causes me to cough, or there's some other factor that's likely to aggravate my coughing. And then a digital therapeutic would take in this information and say, hey, it's almost like it's the preventative, proactive interception, a bit like telling me to get off TikTok, not that I use TikTok, but telling me to get off TikTok, but 2 hours before bed, because that will help my theoretical insomnia. Is that similar to what you're talking about, where you're almost preempting some changes in condition and based on your data, able to intercept it in an earlier position?
Yeah, and that's exactly the vision that we're working towards. Someone who has a cough or that's bothering them, or more likely it's keeping their partner awake, or they're, you know, and so the partner says, you know, hey, Peter, you're really coughing a lot. You should do something about it. I'm like, yeah, I don't cough that much. And she's like, no, well, I found this app. Why don't you just download it? I go, wow, I coughed 400 times yesterday. You're right. That then helps me to understand the magnitude of my problem. And then it starts to edge you into this. Oh, and by the way, there's a curriculum here that would you like to run through it? And that curriculum will teach me then how to suppress it. So it's a nice continuum. Whereas if I download the app and it turns out I'm coughing 20 times a day, I tell my partner, no, it turns you're crazy. I'm not coughing that much, and I'm fine.
It's a cough gaslighting.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are the ways, and we're always really curious on this podcast about what are the ways you're proactively and preventatively reaching out to people? Is it, let's say something's picked up, would I get a notification on my Apple Watch? What's some of the supporting processes around ensuring that people continue to maximize their use of your technology?
Yeah, well, we're really just in the early stages of that. The technology is now ripe for widespread adoption. And so we actually get most of our business by word of mouth. It's just, it's one of these weird things where people say, products don't sell themselves. But our biggest pharma deal came from a pharma company calling us up out of the blue going, we understand you have this cough monitor. Can we work together on how we can use it to identify coughers? And then we're starting to do some social media and Facebook ads and things like that.
There's definitely a very viral TikTok is the type of thing that would be really viral. TikToks tend to be the way forward for B2C selling. So before I go off on that random tangent, what's some of the biggest challenges that you see now? You mentioned your device or your product is ready for mass adoption. What do you think the biggest challenge is that you're facing or that we're facing as an industry to actually drive this adoption? Is it education or what are your thoughts?
Well, I'll mention two things. The first one, probably a little paradoxical, and that is that in order for remote patient monitoring to be adopted, it needs to be FDA cleared. I actually think that the underfunding and under-resourcing that we've done of the FDA is a huge disservice to innovators in the United States. You know, the folks who we've interacted with over the last couple of years are phenomenal, hardworking, trying to do the right thing, but they're just obviously overworked and understaffed. And I really worry that when the FDA get doged or whatever the verb is for, you know, massive budget cuts to improve efficiency, that it's just going to make it harder for innovators like us to get things done. And that's a non-trivial issue in my mind.
That's really interesting. So the bottleneck for actual adoption lies somewhat higher up in the food chain.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the US healthcare system is, you know, you couldn't have made it more complex if you set out with that as a design spec. But there are some things that are absolutely essential, and it's essential for all the right reasons. It's essential because you don't want people paying for devices that don't work or that are even dangerous. And so the FDA is important, and yet it's a very, you know, every interaction, every time we ask them a question, it takes us 4 months. You know, that's not a startup development cycle, right? That's fine if you're Medtronics, right? But
Yeah.
for a simple medical device like this, which has almost virtually no risk, it's just crazy. So I think the FDA is underfunding the FDA is a major issue.
That's really interesting. So let's take a hypothetical product entering into the States. Would it need to get FDA approval to become a health and wellness app as a B2C play? Or is
No.
that some way of securing revenue before having to deal with FDA?
Yeah, and it's really about the indication. So we are very clear to always specify that our phone app is a health and wellness app. It is not a medical device. It is not for diagnosing or managing medical conditions. It is just to help people better understand their cough and have more informed conversations. However, to be a medical, and and that's why you see so many of these wellness apps out there, because you know it doesn't require the 3 years and the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. On the other hand, to really have impact, this has to be taken up by medical systems, and medical systems in the US are reliant upon reimbursement, and reimbursement requires that a remote patient monitoring device is FDA cleared, that it is, you know, monitored 16 days a month, and that you know, the provider spends some time looking at the results, and so it's an absolute showstopper to impact if we don't get these products cleared.
Was this one of the, in terms of the journey of you guys, was this a surprise in terms of understanding how convoluted it can be to get FDA approved, or was this something you were completely aware of entering into the space? And I ask that because I think people have this idea of, I've got this new product that I can wear on my chest that looks at my breathing and helps me figure out my nervous system regulation, one of my friends' ideas, but then they're not sure of the actual reality of entering into the US.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just flaunt my naivete and ignorance by saying I had no idea it was going to be this hard. And it's been very hard because with the FDA devices, if there is a similar device, what they call a predicate, then there's a 510K mechanism, which can be relatively easy. If you want to introduce a new blood pressure monitor, the FDA has cleared thousands of these. Here's the form, fill it out, boom, done. If they've never done this before, then it becomes a long process, a so-called de novo clearance, in which you enter into a dialogue with the FDA and you say, well, here's how we would write our indications for use. And they're like, yeah, not quite. And then you come back and go like, okay, I rewrote it. And they're like, yeah, that'll do. And it's an awkward kind of process. And it takes a lot of time because from their side, they are genuinely trying to understand what would you need to do with something that they've never thought about to ensure that it is safe and effective. And we've been through this process now with the FDA. We think we're aligned on what we need to do, and we're doing that. So I'm quite excited that we'll be FDA cleared by the end of next year. Fingers crossed. But it is non-trivial. And there are a lot of strategic decisions to be made. And the process of communication, as I mentioned, given the FDA staffing levels, it takes time.
Are you able to pass in, do you have an API? For example, if there's other people who deal with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I should have probably mentioned that as our third form factor. So we have the consumer app, we have the medical device watch, and we also have APIs that can run on other devices. We have some partnerships with some consumer electronics companies, names that would be familiar to you, as well as other medical research tools. And, I think the future of cough monitoring for me, and I'll just put it out there because I'm often wrong about these things and not embarrassed to be so. I think very soon that if you have a cough, you will have a cough monitoring device that you use. Very similar to hypertension. If you're taking blood pressure medicines, you should have a blood pressure cuff at home. Most people don't. But in the future, it's going to be like step counters. It's ubiquitous. It's on all consumer devices, and you just pay attention when you care. But there's a subset of those which are known to be precise, accurate, and cleared for medical use. And in step counting, that's this Actigraph device. They were one of the leaders, and they're still what people use when they really care.
That's really, really interesting. Well, Peter, I just noticed how quickly the time has flown, and I can't believe it's been already half an hour. So I wanted to say, before we finish up, I've got two questions. The first one is, imagine fast forwarding 50 years from now, and you wake up, you look in the mirror, and you're a little bit grey, and you're a little bit wrinkly, as I will probably be in 50 years' time. And you look in the mirror and you think, wow, it is the year 2074, and just another day of being Peter. I'm so excited and then can you outline to me what a perfect day in terms of technology and remote patient monitoring would look like for you in this hypothetical blue sky thinking of what things look like in 50 years' time?
Well, first of all, the fact that I'm waking up in 50 years at the age of 115 is already pretty amazing. So, and who knows, maybe it's possible. If I had my wits about me, I'd be all on board for that process. No, you know what? Technology would be invisible. I wouldn't even know it existed. And yet everything that I did would just be so much easier. And in terms of my health, I think that would mean that I'm not like taking little notes going like, hey, I had a little bit of a sore throat today, or I wouldn't be, running my very small processor in my brain to think like, is my cough a little worse today? Should I increase my medicines? All of this would just happen, and I could focus on the things that really matter, which is spending time and effort on family and personal growth.
I appreciate that's a lovely answer, and ultimately where I hope humanity gets to. My last question is, there'll be people listening to this who are at university and they've just finished studying whatever engineering or computer science degree, and they want to think about entering into the health tech space. And then there'll be people who have been in this space for 10 years working, but are looking to maybe spin up their own thing. What encouraging advice would you offer to listeners considering bringing innovation into this market?
Yeah, I've spent basically my entire professional life in health innovation. I was a physician in San Francisco, UCSF, during the early AIDS epidemic. I did my tuberculosis work at Stanford, the Gates Foundation work, and now this. I gotta say, if you love it, it's easy work, and it's easy to do. And I think I just can't believe I got paid to do what I've spent my life doing. And so it's kind of old and trite, but I would say it's really about following your passions, because if you love doing this kind of work, then you will do great and enjoy it. And that kind of enthusiasm is what really opens the doors, because at the end of the day, looking back, it's so much about all the decisions that I made along the way, all the doors that were open for me, the choices I made, the mentors I had, and I just think that optimistic, energetic people attract opportunities and great mentors.
That's a lovely answer to hear, especially as someone who's earlier on. Oh, I don't want to say the big difference in age, but I'm definitely a little bit less wise in the world than you are.
You can call me old. I'm feeling that way on days.
Yeah, that resonates with me, and so I'm sure it'll resonate with other people. So thank you, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything else you'd like to share today? If not, then I really, really thank you for your time.
No, that's it, Monty. Thanks. It's been really fun talking
Amazing.
with you.
Thanks, Peter. I learned a lot. Thanks. Peace. Bye bye.
Take care.